Hi, everyone. So, a bit more than 2 years ago, I found out this call for speakers for a TEDx youth event that is organized every year by one of the European schools in Brussels. So, I reached out and I said, I want to join and I can talk about poo. And they said, okay, join, but the topic is actually what makes us human. Perfect. Because for me, above all, there is one thing that makes us human, and this thing is connection. Despite the dominant narrative of competition and individualism, research shows that humans as a species were mostly made for altruism, for cooperation, to form social bonds and to care for our surroundings. And thinking about connection, not only to one another, but also to the places we live in and to the ecosystems we are embedded in, I realized that there is one thing that illustrates this connection better than anything else. Poo. Now, poo, connecting us, you may wonder, the thing that actually we cannot even speak about with our closest ones because it's such a taboo. Well, I understand my grandmother actually has a saying, well, probably it's not hers, but she says that there is one thing where even the queen goes alone, the toilet. But let me argue that what the queen is doing there in the toilet behind closed doors is actually solid evidence that we are not alone and that we are part of the big interconnected web of life. First of all, because we all poo. Humans do, cats and dogs do, cows, wolves and hares, elephants, giraffes and whales, birds, insects, we all poo. Even trees do, sort of. Imagine the lush carpet of autumn leaves, the tree's very own way to eliminate the substances they don't need anymore. And then there is this one thing that poo is part of, and is what keeps the life going: nutrient cycling. Now, through poo, we eliminate byproducts of our metabolism and other things we no longer need, including excess nutrients. These nutrients, like nitrogen and phosphorus, are important for all living organisms. Plants take them up from the soil in order to grow and stay healthy, and they pass them on to the animals that eat them. Now, animals, humans included, also need these nutrients, but mostly when we grow up, and even then in small quantities. So we eliminate the rest of the nutrients with our poo to return to the soil, nurture another plant, and continue the cycle of life. Without nutrients, there is no food, there is no life. Now, for this reason, it's not surprising that nature has come up with some pretty amazing ways to keep the nutrients cycling. In Greece, where I come from, we have this quite common experience in the summer where we come back from the beach to our cars that we have left under a tree for the shade, and we find a goat on the rooftop munching on the leaves above. Now, goats are browsers, unlike sheep, for example, that graze on the grass. And what they do while they are defecating is transferring the nutrients from up there, the treetop, right on the soil. Giraffes do the same, and they don't need a cart to stand on. And then we have hippos. Hippos, they don't see very well. So on their daily walk to the lake to take their little bath, they are leaving their droppings behind so that they can find their way home. And what they do at the same time is fertilizing the soil all along the way. And nutrient transfer can also happen to a much larger scale, transcending landscapes and connecting species. For example, you may have seen these photos of whales leaving a pink flume behind them. This is their excrement, and it's pink because of all the shrimp they are eating. Now, unlike most marine animals that feed on the surface and defecate in deeper waters, whales do the opposite. They can reach in big depths where other animals cannot reach. They feed there, and they, when come up in the surface, And before they take a dive back in the water, they make a huge dump, fertilizing the surface of the ocean, mostly with nitrogen and iron. Then these nutrients are available for the fish, and then for the birds that feed for their fish, from these fish, and then these birds transfer them inland to the animals that feed on these birds. See, what whales do is being part of this global transfer of nutrients from the bottom of the ecosystems back to the land. And what about humans then? Well, humans, we all know, we have been using manure for millennia, and sometimes we have also been using our own excrements in some places of the world, in some historical areas, what we call then humanure or night soil. But mostly our relationship with our poo, it's complicated. When we started living close to one another in cities, rather from a force of good and fertilizer, poo became a problem, a threat. It brought diseases and death. In engineering school, where I studied, we hear a lot about the Great Stink of London and how this great stink gave birth to the modern sewers and wastewater treatment. So imagine we are in London in the 19th century. Population is growing rapidly. There are epidemics of cholera that are killing thousands of people. People are living close to one another, and they dispose of their excrements either in cesspits or more often on the street. Everything goes in the Thames, the same river where drinking water is also drawn from. Now, in the summer of 1858, the heat, the lack of breezes, and all this waste rotting in the river created a thick cloud of stench that sat on top of London, and it was so strong and persistent that the noble noses of the occupants of the new Parliament building at Westminster, right there at the bank of the river, they finally decided to do something about it. And that was the beginning of sewers and of the modern sanitary city. And what an unprecedented achievement for public health it was. It saved us from cholera, from other waterborne diseases, and it dramatically improved the life conditions, the well-being of city dwellers. At the same time, though, it is also a curse. See, what sewers are doing is mixing two things that separately are resources. Our nutrient-rich human excrements on the one hand, and clean drinking water on the other. Together, they are wastewater. And then we have to treat this wastewater to remove the pathogens and the organic matter and the nutrients and make it safe to be returned back into the rivers and into the sea. The solid residue that stays there and has most of the nutrients is either landfilled, more often incinerated, and so these nutrients are lost forever. Today, less than 15% of nitrogen and 50% of the phosphorus in our human excrements is never circulated back. No, did I say less? Yeah, less is circulated back, the rest is not. And not only that, because these sewers are actually so efficient to just take away from us everything we don't want, that we throw even more things in there, like industrial wastewater and urban runoff, and that contains other pollutants like heavy metals and microplastics. See, we solved the problem, but it looks like we created another. Because the way we treat our waste here in this part of the world is telling of another aspect of human nature. That of, despite being ingenious and inventive and a great problem solver, also being a bit short-sighted and sometimes selfish. By creating the modern sanitary city, we basically created a waste production factory where the nutrient cycling is interrupted, where if we were hippos, we couldn't find our way back home. So what to do? As most things that matter in this life, in this world, there is no simple answer and there is no silver bullet. change has to happen in many different levels at the same time, from stopping to mix our human excrements with water and other waste, to developing new technologies for their treatment, and finding the ways to return them safely to the land. Here in this panel, right after this talk, and also in the whole Utopia program, the other talks, the exhibition, you can find and even experience some of these ways. Compost toilets that turn our excrements into humus right on the spot. Source separation toilets that make it easier to recover the nutrients for our excrements. Dry toilets that do the same, and they save valuable drinking water. I recently read a book, a great book, you may know it. It's called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Valkimmerer, where she writes about how Native Americans' relationship to the earth and to the natural world is one of reciprocity, of gift exchanging. What we take from the earth, most notably our food, is a gift. And as a gift, it needs to be honored and savored and eventually returned. See, because the gift exchanging creates responsibility and relationships. And what is our poo if not the gift we are giving back to the earth for the gift of food we received previously? I think this is this quality of poo making as gift giving that we need to restore, not forgetting that poo is the line that runs across the landscapes and connects the species, the goats and the whales and the dung beetles and the humans and everyone to the earth and to the universe. And this is why we should stop treating our shit like shit. Thank you.